This audio is brought to you by Muslim Central. Please consider donating to help cover our running costs and future projects by visiting www.muslimcentral.com/donate.
Assalamu alaikum. This is Yasmin Mogahed and you're listening to Serenity, streaming live on One Legacy Radio. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. Today is a special show. We are continuing to take your questions at serenity@onelegacyradio.com. And we are also taking your questions at the chat box. We ask you to continue to write to us. We are devoting today's show to a very important topic, and it's something that a lot of people struggle with, and that is the topic of overcoming depression, sadness, and anxiety. Now, I want to, encourage you all to write to us, serenity@onelegacyradio.com. One thing that we want to hear from you. We want to hear from you about your questions. We want to hear from you about your experiences, but also we'd like you to send us your inspirational stories as well. Perhaps, maybe a story about something that you heard on the show, or maybe something that you read, or anything in your life that inspired you, or that changed something, or transformed a certain aspect of your life, or helped you in some way. And inshallah, what we will be doing is we'll be choosing I'll be choosing from those and sharing them live, inshallah. And I won't be using anybody's name. It will be completely anonymous, just like the questions will be as well. But we want to hear from you. We want to hear, we want to hear about your struggles, but we also want to hear about the triumphs, and we want to hear about the inspirational stories, how things affected you, maybe something that you gained, and something that you learned, and something that helped you, you or your family or your friends. And also, please do, when you do send your messages to serenity@onelegacyradio.com, mention where you live. Mention the city, the state, the country, inshallah, so we can have an idea of, where we are. Because we truly are a global family, alhamdulillah, and we have people listening from all over the world. So we want to hear from you, want to know where it is that you are listening from, and where you're located. So inshallah, today I want to start off the show, and this is a show, again, talking about a serious topic, a topic that a lot of people do struggle with. But I wanna start off today's show with actually an inspirational story of one of my readers that I received, and the letter begins, Jazakallah khair, Yasmin. I'm reading this article after a year and thinking that this is the article that in fact changed me. I was never really into Islam, nor was I practicing that much. My life was in darkness, with people who only brought me down to a person who wasn't really meant to be. So I fell deep into the dunya. I did things that I am not proud of at all. I kept failing and failing and falling and falling. I was stumbling and I didn't know myself anymore until one night something terrible happened. And I knew at that moment that Allah was in fact always there, but it was me who was ignoring Him, ignoring the Creator. That night I told myself that that enough was enough, and I came back into Islam. I came back to Him. After that night, I went on a journey to change my life. That journey, with Allah being my captain, I was able to turn my life 360 degrees. Today, I don't remember my life without the hijab. Today, I don't remember my life without praying or going daily to the masjid or going to my daily halaqas. Yasmin, I cannot thank you enough for posting this article and really getting deep into everyone's heart. I listened to what you said. I took the keys from the dunya and gave them to the Creator. You are such an inspiring woman, and I look up to you. Thank you so, so much. Now, I read this, and subhanAllah, these are the types of stories that really inspire me personally, to see how someone can turn their life around, how someone can, as the sister says, take the keys that one gives to dunya and give it back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. These are the keys of one's heart. And whenever, a person gives their heart to dunya, the dunya is not something that you should ever give your heart to, because when you give your heart to dunya, dunya breaks your heart. And it's kind of like, if you want the dunya to stop breaking your heart, stop giving your heart to dunya. It's really a simple formula, but we continue to give our hearts back over and over and over to the same place that keeps breaking it, and we don't realize what the problem is. And the problem really is that we're placing our heart in the wrong hands, and oftentimes we place our hearts in the dunya, in the things of the dunya, and specifically in the creation, in the hands of the creation. And rather, we should be giving our hearts to and only to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So that brings me to our first question. The listener says, why do I feel so down and depressed? I've been like this for the past few months. It's damaging me, and I'm increasingly stressed about my graduate job. Alhamdulillah, to begin with, it went well, but past 5 months have gotten so hard and difficult. I'm trying to remain strong, but I'm falling into this hole deeper. Please help. Now, this is, this is one person's experience, but I'm certain that this is something a lot of people can relate to. This person is describing this feeling of being down and depressed, and pretty much very, very stressed out and overwhelmed by what they're doing. There's a lot of issues here. One is the issue of feeling sort of weighed down. This feeling of, I have too much to carry. I have too much on my plate. Now, oftentimes the reason why we feel that way is because we're trying to carry everything on our own. We're trying to carry the weight by ourselves. This is a result of trying to take things on by one's self. So when you face a difficulty, for example, a difficulty comes to you, or you're having to deal with a stressful situation, or you have a challenge in front of you. You have a challenging job or a challenging relationship, or whatever it happens to be, a calamity, whatever it is. And when that faces you, or you have to carry this, you sort of brace yourself and you say, okay, I got this, right? I'm gonna take this on. And the mistake that we make is that we try to take it on ourselves. We try to carry it ourselves. We try to rely on our own means and our own actions and our own selves. And it's this concept of self-reliance, right? That's the culture we live in, right? It's about independence, and right, we don't depend on other people, but we depend on ourselves. And sometimes, whether it is that we are going to other people to depend on, or we are depending on our own selves, it's actually the same, because other people are a creation, and myself is also a creation. And by definition, the creation is weak. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that He created mankind weak, da'if. We are weak by our very nature. We cannot depend on ourselves. We cannot depend on other people completely. We cannot put our full dependence. And again, I want to clarify, because this does not mean that we cannot seek help from the creation. It does not mean we can't seek help from people, but it means that our full reliance and our dependency can never be on the creation and can never be on one's own self, because then it will break. The creation is not designed to be able to take on that type of weight that we have. And so when we deal with a problem, whether it's your graduate job, the stress from your career, the stress from your family life, just your stress from school, or whatever it is that you're dealing with, you will always feel weighed down if you're relying on yourself, or if you're relying on something else other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the answer is that we need to go back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and not try to carry our problems by ourselves, but rather turn to Allah with them. And subhanAllah, it's such an obvious answer. It's such an obvious thing to do, but we usually step right over what is obvious and go to what is, less obvious. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَلَقَدْ خَلَقْنَا الْإِنسَانَ وَنَعْلَمُ مَا تُوَسْوِسُ بِهِ نَفْسُهُ وَنَحْنُ أَقْرَبُ إِلَيْهِ مِنْ حَبْلِ الْوَرِيدِ. Allah is saying here that He is the one who created mankind, and He knows what dark whispers our nafs say to us, what whispering our nafs gives, and He is closer than our jugular vein. Allah is saying that He's closer than basically a human being's lifeline. The jugular vein, the vein in the neck, is the vein that brings blood to the heart. And this vein, if cut, the person or the person is immediately will die, or very, very quickly thereafter, because this is the lifeline. And Allah is saying that He's closer than that. So He's closer than our own lifeline. And yet, subhanAllah, Allah is so close to us. Allah is closer to us than our own self. But yet we step over what is closer to us to what is farther away. And we end up putting our dependence on what's farther away beyond, over what is closer. It's kind of an interesting thing that we do. When we're faced with a stress, when we're faced with a problem, usually the first thing we do is we turn to the means, we turn to the creation. So if I have stress, one simple example, if I feel sick, for example, I have a headache, and again, this doesn't mean that we don't turn to the means at all, but immediately my first thought is, I have a headache, let me go take some Tylenol, right? Let me go take some medicine. And then the medicine doesn't work. Okay, well now let me, wow, this headache isn't going away, maybe I should call a doctor. So I call a doctor, I go in, I see the doctor checks me out, does a million tests, the headache still is not going away, and actually it's getting worse. Okay, so I saw a general practitioner, now I'm going to see a specialist. So then I go to the specialist, and now the specialist also cannot figure out why I have this headache and cannot cure it. And then that specialist sends me to another specialist, right? So now I'm going, from means to means to means, from creation to creation to creation. And all along, I'm putting my expectation in that to cure me. And every time it doesn't, I go to the next. And then finally, I get to maybe a doctor that says, you know what? We have no idea what's wrong with you. There is nothing absolutely that we can do for you. And it is then and only then that I turn and I make dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's only then that I turn to Allah and I ask Allah for help. Allah, cure me. And this is at exactly the opposite order that we're supposed to be dealing with things. When something faces me, my immediate response, immediately I should be turning to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And thereafter, I go to the means, because I know this for a fact, that the means, whether it's the doctor or the Tylenol or the specialist, the means is not what's curing me. The means cannot cure. The means has absolutely no power in and of itself except by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah is the one who cures. Allah is the one in control. And so I'm very clear about that we immediately, when something is difficult or I'm struggling with something or something is very stressful, I turn immediately to the one who can actually solve it, and the one who is closer to me than my own jugular vein. And then thereafter, I go to the means, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala uses the means as a tool, but He is the one in control. That's what we have to keep in mind. So when we get, if you're feeling stressed because of your job, you're feeling down and you're feeling depressed, and if it's a result of this, we need to really prioritize where we're turning for help and where we're putting our reliance. The next question, for the past 5 months, I have felt really, really down, in misery and just deeply distressed overall, and I don't know how to get out of this state. things have become difficult in my graduate job. Alhamdulillah, to begin with, it was going well, but now it's so difficult, I feel lost. Again, it's the same, the stress of our job or the stress of our career. Something I want to also point out about this issue is I don't want to discount the presence of biological reasons for sadness and depression. I'm not saying that all of sadness and depression can only be explained by spiritual reasons. There are definitely are biological reasons that can contribute to this this state. However, there is for every disease there is a cure. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us that and we also know that Allah does give us ways and gives us means and gives us understandings within spirituality, within our relationship with Him, which can aid us, which can help us, even when it is biological. And that isn't, again, to say that it may completely take it away or completely solve it if it is, but this definitely, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does give us tools in order to alleviate these symptoms, inshallah, and give us peace and give us peace of mind, inshallah. I will continue with the questions, inshallah, after this short break when we return on Serenity. Assalamu alaikum. This is Yasmin Mogahed, and you're listening to Serenity, streaming live on One Legacy Radio. We are speaking today about the topic of sadness, depression, anxiety. We're taking your questions. We have received some questions, and we ask you, again, inshallah, to write in your questions at serenity@onelegacyradio.com. Share with us your questions. Let us know where you're writing from, what country or city you're living in. Also, we want to hear from you about your inspirational stories, stories about something that happened in your life that inspired you, something you read, something you heard on the show. Inshallah, we will be sharing those as well. The next question is, my friend's du'as are not answered and she's depressed. I don't know how to help. This is also a common question. People oftentimes feel frustrated and they get depressed when things are not working out the way that they want, and they feel that their du'as are not being answered, their supplications. They ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for something again and again and again, and it's not happening, and they get very frustrated and down about that. Now, this is a question which I think in order to really understand it, we have to change our perspective. A lot of times what we do is we use Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and what we really want to achieve is something in the dunya. We want something of the dunya. We want a good job, or we want a lot of money, or we want to marry a specific person. And we use Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala like a genie in a bottle, where we try to make a wish, right? We're making a wish, you rub the bottle a couple times, you make a wish. And then when that wish isn't coming true, we get really frustrated and we kind of throw the bottle away, right? And subhanAllah, this is not Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah is not a genie in a bottle. Allah is the goal Himself. And what we've done is we have made dunya the goal. We have made our goals in dunya, our money, or I want to marry so-and-so, or I want this job, or I want to be in this school, and that is actually our goal. And we use Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as the tool. We use Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as the means to get to our goal. So we're using Allah as the tool in order to get to dunya. And subhanAllah, it's supposed to be the exact opposite, where we are using dunya to get to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah is the goal. Allah is the only goal. Allah is the ultimate goal. And everything else ultimately was created to be a means, was created to be the tool and the vehicle to take us to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This doesn't mean that we can't ask Allah for things. This doesn't mean that we shouldn't make dua for the things we want. In fact, Allah does love for us to ask of Him. But what we need to realize is that when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not give us what we ask for, it may be because it is better for us. It may be because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in His ultimate and infinite knowledge knows that there may be a better means to get to Him than the one we're asking for. So suppose I want to marry a particular person, and I'm asking Allah day and night, and I'm waking up for qiyam, and I'm doing everything, I'm fasting, and I'm asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, I really want to marry this person, and it just doesn't happen. And if that person is my goal, then this is when I get very frustrated, and I can even become angry at Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah, why aren't you working for me? As if Allah is working for us, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala needs to fulfill every wish that we ask for, as if He's working for us. A'udhu billah, Allah is not a genie that's working for us, but rather Allah is the goal. Allah is also the means that we get to anywhere. So we're asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for this person, say we want to marry. But part of that is we are asking, Allahumma in kunta ta'lam anna hadha al-amr khayrun li fi dini wa ma'ashi wa aqibati amri. Part of this, the dua, the supplication for istikhara, for example. See, we pray istikhara, but we're not really praying istikhara. Istikhara is really saying, oh Allah, if you in your knowledge, if you know that this thing is good for me, khayrun li, fi dini wa ma'ashi, in my deen and in my livelihood. So in dunya and in akhirah, in my deen and in my dunya, then and only then we ask, faqdirhu li wa yassirhu li thumma barik li fi. So write it for me and make it easy for me and give me blessing in it. So we are asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, only if this thing is good for me, then make it happen. And then we go on to say, وَإِن كُنْتَ تَعْلَمْ أَنَّ هَذَا الْأَمْرِ شَرٌّ لِي فِي دِينِي وَمَعَاشِي وَعَاقِبَةِ أَمْرِي فَاصْرِفْهُ عَنِّي وَاصْرِفْنِي عَنْهُ وَاقْدُرْ لِي الْخَيْرَ حَيْثُ كَانَ ثُمَّ ارْضِنِي بِهِ. It's perfect dua. Because then we say, and if you know that this thing is not good for me, it is bad for me, then take it away from me and take me away from it. And thereafter, write for me what is good for me. And finally we say, ثُمَّ ارْضِنِي بِهِ, and make me pleased with it. So in the dua of istikhara, see, we pray istikhara, but we don't really mean it. We pray istikhara, and in the dua of istikhara, we are saying that if this thing is good for me, make it happen, write it for me, make it easy, and put blessing in it. And if it is not good for me, then take it away from me, and take me away from it, and then give me what is good, and make me pleased with it. This is what we are asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So when you're making dua and it doesn't work out, then know that this wasn't good for you, because you're asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, if this is good for me, make it happen. If not, don't make it happen. And it doesn't happen. So we have to learn to let go. We have to learn to realize that whatever it was you were making dua for, what is the ultimate purpose? What is the ultimate purpose of you wanting to marry so-and-so? What is the ultimate purpose of you wanting to get into this particular school? What is the ultimate purpose of you wanting to make this amount of money or get this career? Ultimately, the purpose should be, if you're wise and you want to actually hold on to it, is for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because everything else is passing away. كُلُّ مَنْ عَلَيْهَا فَانٍ. The only thing that's remaining is the face of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the only thing of what you have that's going to remain with you are those things that you gave for His sake, are those things that you did for His sake, are those things that you did because of Him and through Him and for Him. Everything else is just passing away. And I'm going to just give you this example because it exemplifies the point. And that is something simple like eating an apple. When I eat an apple, that act itself can be in one of three categories. That act can either be something which I get good deeds for, something which is neutral, or something that's actually I'm getting bad deeds for. And I'll tell you how. Even though it's the same act, my intention, my state of heart, my focus of heart, why I'm doing it, can transform it from being something that I'm getting rewarded for to something neutral, I'm getting, not rewarded or punished, or something that I may be punished for. And I'll tell you why. If I'm eating that apple, and my intention of eating that apple is, I'm eating this apple, suppose you're eating the apple in suhoor, and your intention is, I'm eating this apple so that I can fast. I'm eating this apple as part of my suhoor in compliance with the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ of eating suhoor, and I'm eating this in order to have enough food that I am able to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala through fasting. then that act of eating the apple actually becomes a good deed for you, actually are rewarded for it. If I'm eating the apple just because I like the apple, and there's no other reason, then that's the neutral category. I'm not doing it for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but there's nothing haram with eating an apple, it's halal. So I'm eating an apple. So that's neutral. Now that category is something that is not harming me, but it's not helping me either. As soon as I eat that apple, I have this maybe momentary pleasure of the taste. I like the apple, or I momentarily satiate my hunger. But what happens after that? It disintegrates. It's gone. That act is gone. I don't actually hold on to it. I don't. There's nothing I'm retaining from it. Kullu man alayha fan. Everything is passing away. So that apple is gone. The act is gone. The pleasure of eating it is gone. I didn't hold on to any part of that act, or of the apple itself. It's gone. Now the third category is when I have an intention that is displeasing to Allah. For example, maybe I'm eating that apple because I don't want to eat, because I'm on a diet, and the reason I'm on a diet is because I want to look really good in a bikini. Okay, so now I'm eating the apple, and I have an intention that's actually something that is displeasing to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so here we have these three, the same act, which can be actually completely different, although externally look exactly the same. And that's because the heart of the act is different and the intention is different. So my intention is when it's for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and it's in a way that's pleasing to Him, I'm actually holding on to that. It is only the first category, the one where I'm doing it for His sake, that I'm actually benefiting from it ultimately. Even the middle one, even the one where there's nothing wrong with it, but ultimately I'm still losing, right? I'm still, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaks about people in Surah Al-Asr. He says that mankind is in a state of loss. Wal-Asr, innal insana lafi khusr. Mankind in general is in a state of loss. Everything we do and everything we have, we're losing it. Except, and there's only one select group of people who are not losing. Even that apple is not being lost. Even the act of eating the apple is not being lost. إِلَّا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالْحَقِّ وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالصَّبْرِ. Except those who believe and do righteous deeds and enjoin one another to truth and enjoin one another to patience. Only that group who are doing this for seeking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala actually hold on, and they are not in the category of mankind who are in a state of loss. So if you really want to hold on to this life, any part from this life, only that which is for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's sake is something that you're actually going to hold on to. The next question: what makes me sad is that at the age of 37, still I didn't settle my mission in this world, which led me to contribute for the society and return to get ajr from Allah. Sometimes makes me really sad, even if I overcome it later. So this person is feeling that they haven't, they had goals for themselves. Now they're feeling like they're 37 years old. They had these goals and they didn't achieve these goals. And this is depressing for the person. And I think that sometimes this happens, again, because we set our goal wrong. We set our ultimate goal wrong. For example, something which is, yes, it's a lofty goal to contribute for society. But is that really our goal, or is that a means? When we contribute to society, when we make a difference in society, why ultimately do we want to do that? Is it because we want society to say that this person contributed? Is it because we want to be remembered after we die? Is that the reason? Or is it because that is going to get me to a higher place with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, inshallah? If it is for that second reason, then what if there's another way to get me higher with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? See, if it's really for the reason of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then I don't care which path I take to get there. But our problem is we say that it's for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sometimes. Sometimes we say it is for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but really, no, I want that thing. I want to contribute, and it's for a different reason. And the way that we can sort of think about this in a metaphor, an example to think about this is if I want to get to a city. So right now I'm in Orange County. Suppose I want to get to Los Angeles. If I want to get to Los Angeles, and there are a number of different highways to get there, my goal is Los Angeles. But suppose that initially my GPS tells me to take the 5 and the highway, right? Highway 5. And I'm on the highway, and then somehow it reroutes me, maybe because there's construction or a lot of traffic. And now it's taking me on the 91. If my goal was Los Angeles, I really don't care what highway I take, right? But if my goal is Highway 5, if my goal is that particular thing, then rerouting me isn't going to be cool with me, right? I'm not going to be okay with that. As soon as the GPS tells me to reroute, I'm going to freak out. No, I'm staying on this road. I'm not rerouting, because my ultimate attachment is not to Los Angeles. It's not to getting there. It's to staying on this particular path. My attachment is to Highway 5, and I don't want to reroute, even if that's a better route for me, even if this route is full of obstacles and full of, it's actually going to be bad for me. I'm attached to the route itself. And this happens a lot, that we say, for example, a lot of people, will message me and say, my goal is I want to be a da'i. I want to give dawah. I want to be a public speaker. And, alhamdulillah, this is a noble job, but is my goal to be a da'i? Is my goal to be a public speaker? Or is my goal Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? What if there's a different path that's better for me to get to Him? What if it has nothing to do with dawah? What if it has nothing to do with being in the public sphere at all? It may or it may not, and everyone's path is different. So if you feel you're at 37 and you feel like you haven't achieved your mission, maybe it's because you need to refocus. What is the ultimate mission? Is the ultimate mission contributing to society, or is the ultimate mission pleasing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the way that is best and in the way that is most pleasing to Him and the fastest route to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? When we refocus, then all of a sudden we let go of, we sometimes get attached to the means. We get attached to how it is. We say, yes, we want to get to Allah, but we want this way. I want only this way. And that isn't right, because our attachment shouldn't be to the way. Our attachment should be to the goal. So inshallah, I'm going to take another short break now. And when we return, we'll continue with the questions on the topic of depression and anxiety. Assalamu alaikum. This is Yasmin Mogahed, and you're listening to Serenity, streaming live on One Legacy Radio. We are continuing the topic today, taking your questions. Today's topic is something that a lot of people struggle with, and that's the topic of depression, sadness, anxiety. And we are going on to the next question now. The next question says, how to deal with low self-esteem. When you think about self-esteem, the question you have to begin with is where does your self-esteem come from? That's the key. That's the heart of it. What defines your self-worth? What defines your feeling good about yourself, your feeling like you've achieved? And this is the central question. It's a question that has plagued a lot of people. We know when you look at, for example, the concept of a woman's self-worth, a lot of times the society itself defines for a woman what makes her worthy and what makes her have that honor. And unfortunately, the standards set by society for women especially have everything to do with the way she looks and how attractive she is to men. And or how thin she is, or what her body looks like, or And so what has happened is women have had to struggle with this concept that her self-worth is linked, intimately linked to how she looks and how attractive society thinks she is. And this is something that a lot of women struggle with, especially women who don't feel attractive, women who feel that they are overweight, or they don't have, the body that they want, and so they struggle with this feeling of low self-esteem and low self-worth. And sometimes, this also happens with men. The focus with men is not so much on their bodies and the way they look, but there's other things that define a man's self-worth in society. And a lot of it maybe has to do with their accomplishments in the dunya. How much money do they make? What is their status in society? What do they own? What kind, the gadgets they have, the toys, right? And the idea here is all of these definitions are wrong. We have to go back and realize what really defines our self-worth. And our self-worth can only and should only be linked to our relationship with our Creator. If we link our self-worth with that, and that is the only thing that actually has a value in and of itself, right? And it's when we link our self-worth with our relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that we can really, at the root, work on low self-esteem. Because what happens then is, as long as I'm good with God, right? As long as I'm good with my Creator, it doesn't affect me. It doesn't matter if I'm not pleasing in the eyes of society or in the eyes of the creation, because as long as I am with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala where I should be or where I want to be, and I'm striving in that way and I'm improving and I'm trying, then I feel good about myself, because that is the true worth. That's the true definition of worth. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has said in the Quran that the most honored of you is the one who is the most righteous. Inna akramakum indallahi atqakum. That indeed the most honored among you is the one who has the most taqwa, the one who has the most fear and God consciousness, the one who's protecting himself from the displeasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That is the one who is most honored. So if you want to really know whether or not you are honored, ask yourself, are you honored in the eyes of your Creator? That is the true honor, and the rest is something that's just comes and goes and passes away and is ultimately really meaningless. The definitions of society, of what makes a person worthy, change. They change across culture, they change across time. It's something that's temporary and fleeting. Those definitions, you go back a few years ago, the definition of beauty was completely different than it is now, and it will continue to change. That is not where a person gets their worth. And similarly, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also teaches us this lesson, because these things that we hold on to define our worth are all fleeting. So for example, if my worth is connected to how much I can achieve in my career, well, maybe for a few years I can achieve. For a few years, I'm productive and I have I have status. But then I get to be 60, 70, and now I can't achieve as much anymore. I can't produce as much anymore. So now what? So now what happens? And if my definition of worth is connected to how much I can achieve or how much I can produce or how much money I can make or what status I have, all of a sudden I feel worthless if that were where it's connected to, because my ability to achieve and to strive and to work hard and to produce is limited, and it's temporary. Similarly, if my definition of self-worth is connected to the way I look, a person they feel good about themselves because they're thin and they look nice and society says they're attractive, well, okay, that may be the case for maybe 10, 20, 30 years, maybe with a lot of plastic surgery, but then you cannot can maintain that forever. It is the sunnah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that these things pass away. And no matter how beautiful a rose is, it's going to wither and it's going to ultimately crumble. And the same thing happens to our bodies. The same thing happens to our external beauty. This isn't something that's lasting. So, if it's connected to, if my self-worth is connected to that, it won't last. These things are not lasting for a reason. And in that is a sign of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to show us this is not what you should be holding on to. This is not what should be your definition, because it doesn't even last. It's kind of like you're not going to try to hold on to a moving train. I mean, you'd be pretty crazy to try to that's what you're going to hold on to, because it's moving, it's constantly changing, it's not stable. That can't be your definition. So if you go back and you really fix your definition of what really matters and what really is the definition of what is your worth and your self-esteem, then that will inshallah help you to have a stable sense of yourself and be able to withstand the changes that happen around you, because those things are coming and going. Beauty, status, money, all of those things are just coming and going, and as they change and as these waves go up and down, you're able to have some sort of stability in your self-concept and in your self-worth if you're holding on to that which is stable and that which does not go up and down and that which does not change, and that is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That needs to be your definition. If your definition is anything else, it will just come and go, and it will just go up and down. And you'll see this too in the one who makes his self-worth based on status. You'll notice that this is also something not lasting. Even if you look at the greatest tyrants that lived, right? They had all this power and all this status, and look at what happened to them. What happened to Pharaoh? Pharaoh, I mean, he was this great tyrant, and he thought, and he stood and he said, "Ana rabbukum al-a'la," I am your Lord Most High. I mean, he thought, he thought his worth and his power was linked to this temporary status that he had. But look what happened to him. He was drowned, and what is he now? I mean, he's perhaps mummified in a museum in Egypt. I mean, just to show us, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said he saved his body to show us as a sign. This is a sign of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Similarly, look at the dictators of look at what happened to the dictators of our time now. There was a time when they had all this power, and then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala turns. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala turns the affairs. Allah is the one who elevates, and Allah is the one who humbles and debases. It's all in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's hands. Never ever allow your self-worth or your self-esteem to be connected to these things which are constantly changing and which are temporary illusions, really. The next question. I have been suffering from severe panic attacks for a long time. I want to know, what is the Islamic perspective of panic attacks? Is there something wrong with my iman that is causing me to have attacks? Is it wrong to suffer from anxiety? I know I should put my trust in Allah, as He is the best of all planners, but I fear that He may put me through something horrendous. Even if I can somehow handle it, is that wrong? There are a lot of issues here. This is getting into the issue of anxiety, panic. I want to sort of separate out two parts of this. One is, again, the biological aspect. I don't discount that. There are biological aspects to these types of conditions. However, what I want to focus on is another aspect, and that is the aspect of general anxiety. And a lot of us, suffer from this in differing degrees. And I would say that generally anxiety comes when and the sister or brother really hit the nail when he or she talked about reliance. Where is your trust? Where are you putting your dependency? One of the reasons I have found personally in my life that I begin to feel anxious, or I begin to feel scared or worried, very, very worried about something, is when I have the wrong focus. Whenever there's a problem, so you're going through your life and you're faced with this problem. something that you're very worried about. Suppose it's a financial problem. You lose your job or you get laid off. Suppose it's a health problem. Suppose it's a problem with your family. Whatever the problem is, usually the way that we deal with it as human beings is we focus on the problem, right? We sit and we think about the problem. We sit and we contemplate how we're going to solve the problem. We basically take the problem and turn it upside down and all around in our mind. We're constantly thinking about it, constantly working through it in our brain. It's what we are focused on. In other words, our heart is focused on the problem. And that's the problem. Our problem is that we're focused on the problem. When we do that, what happens is, one, we can't solve the problem. Focusing on a problem isn't going to solve it. Second, it causes a lot of anxiety. It causes a lot of distress because we're looking at the wrong thing. Our heart is focused on the wrong thing. We need to bring our heart back to focusing on the right thing, and that is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So instead of focusing on the problem itself, we need to focus on the one who can solve the problem. Now again, to reiterate, because we're going to have people saying, well, does that mean I don't do anything to solve the problem? And what about my doing my part and all that? Yes, that is absolutely true. We strive with our limbs to do our part. But this, what I'm talking about, I want, inshallah, to listen very carefully that what I'm talking about is focus of heart, focus of mind. What is consuming me is not the problem. What is consuming me is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. My focus is on Him to solve my problem, while at the same time that I am striving to solve the problem with my limbs. So let me put it in another way. My body, my actions are working to solve the problem, but my heart and my mind are looking at Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. My heart and my mind are in a state of tawakkul. Tawakkul is a state of the heart. Tawakkul is not a state of the limbs. So my limbs are working. Yes, I am working. I'm taking the means. I'm seeking a job. I'm applying. I'm doing those things with my actions. But my heart is at peace because my heart is in a state of tawakkul. My heart is looking at Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and knowing that Allah will make a way out for me, and knowing that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will be the one who solves my problem. It isn't my actions, it isn't my applications, it isn't my hard work that's going to solve the problem, but it's Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala who's going to solve it. And if it's a problem of a disease, if it's whatever it isn't Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It is Allah. It isn't the medicine, rather. It isn't the, I have a headache, I'm sick, my child is sick. It isn't the doctor, it isn't the medicine that's going to cure him. Even though, yes, I go to the doctor. Yes, I go and I take the medicine. No one is saying that you don't do that. But you know that it's Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala who is the one who cures. And it is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala who is al-fattah. Allah is the one who opens. When you're in a problem and things feel like they're closing in and you feel very narrow. You feel very narrow. The reason you feel narrow is because you're focused on the problem, and then the problem actually surrounds you, right? Everywhere you look, that's all you see is your problem, is your concern, is this thing that you're struggling with. It just takes you and it just surrounds you, and this is what you have to break out of. You have to refocus your heart on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Practically, what does that mean? Because this is conceptual. Practically, it means that my mind, when it starts to go towards the problem, in terms of being, worried and consumed, instead I refocus it. I make dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is not in contradiction to taking the means. Let me emphasize that. If I'm worried about financial difficulties, I am continuing to apply. I'm continuing to do what my part is, right? I'm doing my part. Aqilha wa tawakkal, right? You're tying your camel and relying on Allah. It's not thumma, by the way. It's not tie your camel and then rely on Allah, but it's at the same time. So you are doing your part. Yes, you're applying and you're doing everything you can, But every time your heart starts to worry and starts to look at, oh, but what am I going to do? What about this bill? That's when you refocus the heart on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And you remind your heart that it's Allah who's the provider. And you remind your heart that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one who makes a way out for you. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, مَن يَتَّقِ اللَّهَ يَجْعَلْ لَهُ مَخْرَجًا. Whoever has taqwa of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah is the one who makes a way out for them. Allah will make a way out for him. وَيَرْزُقُهُ مِنْ حَيْثُ لَا يَحْتَسِبْ. And He will provide for him from places that he never imagined. It is Allah who provides. But if I'm looking at the provision itself, if I'm looking at the creation or anything of the creation in the dunya, that's not where the solution is going to come from. And so it doesn't make sense to make my focus on that. And in fact, it only makes me weighed down, and it only makes me scared and anxious. I need to refocus my heart, make dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and know that Allah is the one who hears all the du'as. I want to again encourage you to write your questions, send your reflections, send your inspirational stories to serenity@onelegacyradio.com. And inshallah, we will be we will be again coming tomorrow to you live at 11 Pacific Standard Time, 6 p.m. GMT. And inshallah, we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to ease the pain and the suffering and the sadness of all those who suffer. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to ease the anxiety and to make Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala our ultimate focus and our ultimate dependency. أقول قولي هذا واستغفر الله لي ولكم إنه غفور رحيم والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.